Melanie Naismith here, and this is Sounds Like Us. Today's guest is lino cut artist Kat Holm. Sounds Like Us is a community artist project brought to you by Working for Victoria and Tauranga Shire Council. The aim of this series is to shine a light on creatives that have been influenced by the Tauranga Shire and to share a brief snapshot of their journey within the arts.
When I was a kid, really interested in art and not necessarily printmaking at the time, but then I went to university in Wagga and did applied arts, majored in ceramics, minored in printmaking, so I swapped around that. Got married, brought up a family, found it really hard to continue doing my art with bringing up a family on a farm. Ceramics was really hard, so the kids would be in my studio making a mess and wrecking my work. So that was difficult. And then halfway through, I wanted to get back into doing art. My husband actually made me a slab roller to start with. He engineered that and made it. So I had this slab roller and I went into him one day and I said, "Darling, I think I want to do printmaking. Can you convert my slab roller into a press?" And he did that for me. And once that happened, I was just like hooked.
So I'm looking at a piece of your work right now, which is the scene of Corryong.
That's it, yeah.
And you seem to be very influenced by places,
yes,
and structures, I suppose, with stories to them from what I've seen from your work. Can you just describe how you got to that point where it's almost like you're recording history, but in your own way a little bit?
Actually, yes, because I did another Corryong print 5 years ago and it's actually, the town has actually changed. So the black sheep, it was the fork and spoon. So in my first Corryong print, I had the fork and spoon and now it's the black sheep. There's a few more sculptures being added into the town. So yes, it does record a little bit of times. The towns, I started doing them one a year. Places that I've been to, places that I've connected to. I've done Bermagui, Melbourne, Violet Town. I was a commission to do Violet Town, but that's where we drop in all the way down to Melbourne and back again. And my influence is African and Aboriginal sort of naive art and storytelling and pattern making. And so that's a big influence. And the lino cut really lends itself to that.
The print that I'm looking at looks supremely detailed. Straight away, I did see that there is a narrative, even though it is a scenescape. There's different styles sort of in amongst it as well.
That's it. And you can never, I want to try and portray, it's not an accurate map of Corryong. It's things that really reflect how I feel about Corryong and what means something to me. So the school where I went to, the primary school that I went to, the streetscape, it goes all the way to Tauranga, the race course where we go to the races.
Yeah, the Tauranga Cup.
That's it.
I remember the best part about the Tauranga Cup is you get to bring all your alcohol in and bring your esky and they don't charge you to do it. It's the best.
It's a real family, affair.
Yeah.
It's not, it's a more country race course. So I just wanted to portray the farming area, the seasons that we have in Corryong. I love that we have 4 seasons, the winter, spring, and every season's a bit different. That's why in the actual print, it's not just one season. I'm putting in the winter, I'm putting in the summer and spring. So everything that tells you a little bit about Corryong. The Murray River's in there, the platypus. There's a lovely nature feel of Corryong. So that's where I sort of get these from.
So what's next for Kat? So I saw some colour. So a lot of the work that I've seen so far is black and white, which is almost a timeless
That's it.
Look.
Yes.
That can find itself and lend itself anywhere. And I think to look at it in depth is where the whole intricacies sort of come out to you. But I've seen some coloured type things, which is a new project that you're talking about.
Yes. So still lino cut, but it's multicoloured lino, and the process is a reduction. It's called reduction printing, and you print one colour, they carve away a little bit more, then print the next colour. So it actually destroys the plate as you go. You can't ever go back. So you might start with 20 prints, and out of those 20 prints on the first colour, you might lose a 1 or 2. So then you're down to 18 for the next colour. And then at the very end, you work out how many prints you can get out of that 20. So you might only get 12 or 15 that are good enough to sell.
And then that's it.
And that's it. The plate is completely ruined. But most of my prints, you'll see that they'll have an addition on them. So the large crayon print, which is a very new one, I've done 30 prints of that. There won't be any more printed. Once you've put the addition down, you don't ever use that plate again.
So when you say addition, what do you mean by addition? Just for anyone who doesn't know, including myself.
Okay, so an addition is a limited amount that will be ever printed, and the bottom number will be how many is in the addition, and the top number is that print.
Yeah.
So number 1 of 30, you might have number 5 of 30.
So it's a limited run.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I can cut the plate up. I can do things like that and reprint maybe smaller sections of it, but I will never be able to print the whole thing again.
It'll never be the same.
No. And some artists will cut or put a mark through their plate so that no one else can ever print off that again either. So it just gives the person who's purchasing the print a guarantee that there's only ever going to be the 30 or 33, because I'm allowed as an artist to have a proof, but they'll be marked AP, which is artist's proof, and they are not classified in the edition.
You actually have been commissioned to do the logo for Sounds Like Us.
Yes.
So how was it to be given sort of a little bit of constraints to work with?
Yeah. So when you do a commission, you get a brief. So you'll be told either I want it coloured or I don't want it coloured, or I want, the kookaburra in it, and I also want the microphone. It has to be a 50s microphone. So those were my brief. And then she said, I don't mind whatever you want to do it in your own style and how you want to put it together. That was my part there. But these 2 elements in it had to be, and this is what I want it to look sort of like. So that's a brief that they're constraints, and they're always harder. The commission that I did for Violet Town was actually my financial advisor. He just said, oh, I love your work. Can you do some for us? It took me 2 years to actually get that commission out. I don't like to just go into a town and I've got to try and do a print from it. I need to feel sort of a connection there. So eventually I said, I've really got to do this. So I sort of knuckled down. But it takes weeks of putting it together. It's not like, and when I'm actually carving, I haven't got the whole piece finished on a piece of paper that I'm carving out. It develops as I go. So I'll have big areas where there's big blanks. Yeah, that fits in there. That's looking good. And then what can I do with this? And I work it sort of. I know the overall what it's going to be like and roughly where things are going to be, but it does develop as I go. And things I might rub out and go, no, I don't like that before I start carving. A big piece can be weeks to get to the finished piece to proof. And then I might even proof halfway through and look at it, and because everything's flipped backwards, you realise that. When you carve, you're carving everything in reverse.
Yeah, that would be very difficult.
So any words or anything like that, you have to write backwards and carve backwards, and any of the positioning of anything
is flipped.
Yes.
What's it like, Kat, to flip your perspective, and how do you put yourself in that space to know that it's all backwards? Do you practice on a mirror?
Yeah, good question. I've taught lots of students that find this really difficult concept. I actually sometimes use an iPad and flip the whole image to help get a perspective of it. But I suppose it's years of doing it. I've always got that in the back of my mind. First of all, I'll design and get it sorted in the right perspective. And then I go, right, now I'm putting it onto the lino or drawing the image on the lino. Now I've got to flip. But I don't always have to flip it either. If the image can go either way, it doesn't really matter. It's only in the eyes of maybe me that will know that should have been the other way. If it's sensitive, as in wording, how things are positioned in a town, those sort of things that have to be right, flipped around the other way, that's when I'm really concentrate on making sure that I've got everything in the right.
And if you don't, you have to start all over again? Or can you refill the lino?
Actually, that's a really good question too. When you're working with lino, if you can, you work with your mistakes because you cannot go back. Yes, you have to start all over again. And I went, oh no, this is horrible. And I've only had to do this probably twice in my career. You actually have to cut a little tiny section of the lino out and replace it and recarve it. So it's like doing a patchwork. Yeah. You glue in another tiny bit of lino and then you redo that carving, but you have to make it all match. And that worked out pretty good. I was happy with that. But it was hours and hours and hours of work.
I feel like I can't do this again. I can't. This has taken me 2 years to start. I'm not.
Yeah. And if I tried to do it again, it would have been different anyway. Like, because as you're working, as you're creating, if I tried to repeat that, it'd probably end up a bit different.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, you're your own worst critic.
My husband says that all the time. If you look at some of my work, you'll see they call it noise in the background, and it's all those little black lines that you've carved out to be a white area, but the paper has picked up
smushed in.
And picked up slight little flicks of black ink. I particularly like that. And if I press it down really hard in the press, it gives an embossing feel as well, nice. Which I love as well. So a little bit of noise you'll see that I'm not real fussed about having it clean white, because those little bits of noise give each print their individuality.
To me, it feels like it's very personal storytelling for you, and thank you so much for sharing
a little bit
of your story.
No problem.
And on Sounds Like Us. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
Today's episode of Sounds Like Us was hosted by Melanie Naismith and produced by Joshua Liston. Sounds Like Us was made possible by Working for Victoria and Tauranga Shire Council. For more information on Sounds Like Us and to hear more episodes from local creatives, go to tauranga.vic.gov.au.